I was a bit misleading because our next speaker is, in fact, Finnish. He's Tom von Weymarn. He's the chairman of the board of Telia Sonera, the largest telecommunications company active here in Finland. But he has, during his many-sided career, also worked in food industry on the very sweet side of it, because he was managing Kultor, which was a Finnish sugar company, and then moved into chocolates with Fazer. So he is very well informed about processed foods on the sweet side of the subject. So, Mr. Tom Weymarn, the floor is yours.
Okay, so good day, everybody. As you can see from the heading, I'm supposed to talk about adapting to the change. I would like to start a little bit with the same theme as Mr. Erkki Toivanen touched about what's in a way changing in relation to economic power. This is a picture from my Kultur years, some more than 10 years ago. And when I saw it, I wanted to update it. The fact is that at that time, the biggest economic power was USA, as you could expect, representing 4,700 billion US dollars in gross national product. Today the corresponding number is 13,800, an increase almost 3 times. European Union, or what existed at that time, represented almost as much as the US economy, 4,500 billion US dollars. Today it's 16,800, an increase of 3.8. Japan was the third biggest. The increase in Japan is only 1.8, while China, that at that time was only 321, is today 10 times bigger. I read a report from Goldman Sachs indicating that 2025 China is probably going to be the biggest nation seen from an economic power perspective. Finland, as a curiosity, represented 91 billion, today 225 billion, an increase of 2.5, not even the average of the European Union. The BRIC countries for sure are going to play a more and more increasing role in this context. Now we are in a way in the middle or an early stage of a financial crisis. What is going to be the impact of the financial crisis on the economic power in the world is too early to say, but I guess it's going to be quite substantial. What I believe is going to be important in relation to economic power of the world in the future is foreign exchange reserves. Where do we have foreign exchange reserves? We have in China, we have in Japan, and we have in Russia. So the influence of those 3 countries are for sure going to increase. And then, of course, what's going to happen with the oil price? That will have an impact. But I'm quite convinced that if we used to have one center of economic power, it's not going to happen again. We are going to see a number of economic power centers in the future. Is that good or bad? I don't know. So what is this all, what sort of impacts is this all going to have? We are seeing, we are experiencing changes at macro level, and we are experiencing changes at micro level. there is a misspelling, of course. The word is concerns. Environmental concerns, health concerns, changes in annual income, demographics, all that will have impacts on the micro level. Changes in demand, qualitative demand changes and quantitative demand changes. And the macro level changes is the driving force towards globalization of markets and industries. Consequences, general consequences. If I go to this picture, I drafted also some 10-15 years ago during my culture years. I looked at it and made a conclusion that not that much has changed. This was a projection at that time. I projected that this is going to happen. And when I'm looking at this picture today, I was pretty close to what really has occurred. We are seeing this globalization, this running towards bigger and bigger economies of scale, where you are in a way scaling up your supply, but you are also in a way scaling up demand, or demand is growing by itself. But simultaneously you see that there are a number of niche opportunities where in a way a global player is not really capable of serving the demands. And the key issue here is that when you develop your operations towards more and more global scale, it's going to be more and more difficult to simultaneously deliver service. So it's a continuous struggle between scale and service. And in fact, there are very many global organizations today that can deliver genuine service. So in a way, being able to deliver service is an opportunity. It has always been an opportunity, and it will continue to be an opportunity. Service and quality together, that would be quite strong. This is a seminar for food industry, so maybe I should concentrate on the consequences for the food industry and consumer goods. This is also an old picture where I tried in a way to figure out all the different value chains that were relevant to culture at the time culture existed. And what in a way I learned by analyzing the value chains is that you have to understand the competition not only in the part of the value chain where you are competing. You have to learn to understand the entire value chain, starting from, let's say, agriculture and ending up with the consumer. You have to understand the earning rationale in all the different steps of the value chain. One interesting thing that was pretty clear to me already at that time was that all the different food chains seem to end up with trade. And in a way, when you started to analyze where is the power in the value chain, you couldn't avoid ending up with the conclusion that most of the power is in fact with the trade. So in a way, if you want to have any sort of reasonable profitability in your business, not being in the trade, you have to think carefully. I think that you need to look at the attractiveness of the market you better be in a market that is growing. If you are in a market not growing, then it's clearly going to be much more difficult. Attractiveness of market means that there is growth, that there is some consolidation, some concentration, there is innovation, and you have, in a way, thanks to your size, certain negotiation position. You also better be in a market where the logistics of the value chain is relatively simple. If you are in a complex value chain, it's much more difficult to manage. The second key criteria is that you need to have some sort of competitive position. You have to have a market share. You have to have a market position. If you are not number one or number two in your business, you better forget it. And it's not only about market share, it's also a question of relative market share. What is your position in comparison to your number one and second competitor? It's about intellectual property rights. Do you have patents that give you support? And then it's very much about lean production. How capital intensive is your production? How flexible are you with your assets? Can you move your assets from one country to another country in a flexible way? What is your capacity utilization in your plant? What is the labor cost and labor efficiency in your operations? Should you produce yourself, or should you buy? All that sort of stuff, in a way, should be elaborated. To move into one specific value chain that I was in charge of, farm salmon. My employer was in fishing. We were one of the biggest fishing fleets. We had one of the biggest fishing fleets in Chile. We were in fish meal, fish oil production in Chile. We were in fish feed production all over the world. We were in fish farming in a couple of countries. We were in fish processing. So we were basically all through the value chain, which of course gave us pretty good understanding about where is, in a way, the profit and how the profit is moving from time to time. And the interesting thing that during the 7 years I spent with Kultor, the profit was concentrated in different places of the value chain. So 1 year, in a way, most of the profit was in fishing or fish meal production. Another year it was in fish farming, and a third year it was in fish feed. Always depending on the supply-demand situation. In a way, I learned that you better understand the forces behind these sort of changes. Today, I have the privilege to share a small cap food industry, Lännen Tehtaat. They are also, in a way, involved in this value chain, but they are basically in processing only. And clearly, in a way, the scope to maneuver for a company that is only one part of the value chain is much more restricted compared to a company that can, to some extent, oversee the entire value chain. I have a picture on agriculture, but I'm not going to spend time on that. This is simply to demonstrate the sort of changes that are taking place there. Last year we had a very high price on cereals. Today it is dropping pretty quickly thanks to the good crops, and the trade is much lower because everybody wants to keep what they have succeeded to grow. We have this biodiesel hype cost of production because of the energy cost and fertilizers. We have this European expansion and the policies that in a way change the internal relations within countries, farming within European Union, and we have this modified organics, genetically modified organisms, where we just had a presentation. So what sort of strategic options from an industrialist perspective do we have in the food value chains? You can in a way go for the brand and scale alternative, which then means that you better have a very strong brand and you better have a global brand. If you don't have a strong global brand, then at least you need to have a strong local brand. If you go and look into the shelves of a retail, you will find there usually the #1 global brand, the #2 global brand, the #1 local brand, maybe the second, and then of course the private labels. But if you don't have a brand which is #1 or 2 globally or locally, then you can forget about it. Or then alternatively, you can in a way go for the niche segments with a genuine service approach. But then it really has to be genuine service, and in a way delivering continuously genuine service is not easy. Then you can go for proprietary distribution. And what is that? Instead of going through the normal retail chains, you can go for distribution via kiosks, petrol stations, the Horeca distribution, etc., etc. That could be a working strategy. But also there you have to be #1 or #2 to be able to make some profit. And if I go back to brand and scale, I read a report last week in a way reflecting the combination of quality and scale. If you have large scale and top quality, then you are for sure making a good return on your investment. If you have large scale but only average quality, for sure that will have an impact on your return on investment. And if you are working in a small scale with a relatively low market share, then you have to have superior quality to do any sort of return on your investment. That was the conclusions from that report. It was a PIMS report, by the way. How to manage change? To manage change, that's about leadership, and in a way creating an organizational climate, an atmosphere where people in a way don't see change as a threat, but rather see change as an opportunity. Leadership also in the sense that in a change situation you always have to change things, and the easy part of changing things is issues related to substance. But you can't in a way make any changes in substance if you don't manage to manage the feelings as well. So change is always connected to feelings of human beings. So to be able to adapt to change, you have to have a leadership that can make people in a way see the change as an opportunity. This picture, it's one of my favorite pictures, where I in a way have tried to visualize what sort of climate, organizational climate you should have to be able to develop in a way a service-orientated organization, and in a way an organization that can read the weak signals about emerging customer needs, required competencies, required structures, and in a way make it happen. Execute in a way whatever is going to be required to satisfy the consumer. In fact, I have learned over the years that you can work in the wrong economy of scale if you have an organization like this. You can manage year after year, but the problem is, can you manage to sustain a climate which is in a way always prepared to jump on the opportunity. This is a challenge not only for the management, this is also the challenge for any board. As long as I'm retired since 5 years, I'm much more involved in the board perspective and much more interested in what a board can do to help organizations adapt to change. So in a way it's about not only a learning organization, it's about also a learning board. Fact is that board work is connected to corporate governance, and I have gradually started to realize that the setup of private equity is also in relation to capacity to adapt to change much more effective compared to, as an example, a listed company. Family companies are not that far from private equity, but in a way family companies, they have a 100-year, 200-year perspective, while the private equity, they only have a 4, 5, 6 years perspective. And in a way, if you have such a short perspective for creating shareholders' value, it's much easier to create, in a way, this attitude that we have to make all this happen in only 4, 5, 6 years. The target is very clear, the time schedule is very clear, and in a private equity, they don't accept the management to do their own thinking or to do their own acting. The shareholders are in a way deciding exactly in what way to reach the targets in the 4, 5, 6 years period. So they have an advantage, a huge advantage compared to listed companies in a capacity to create this sort of an atmosphere, climate, resiliently adapting to change. So I think I will stop here. The ability to learn faster than your competition may be the only sustainable competitive advantage. That was the famous words of Arie de Geus. I think he was working for Shell Corporation some 10, 15 years ago. I believe this is particularly true for small countries like Finland, where it's going to be very, very difficult to create the sort of scale, economies of scale required in global competition. Thank you.
As we are running over time-wise, I will take one question if there are any, because this seminar is about food and we don't want food to wait for us because luncheon will be served after midday. Well, thank you very much indeed, Miss. Oh, there's one question. Please, do go ahead.
Tom, you ended by saying that learning may be enough, and could you explain why the investment in development and research has diminished since 90s? Today in Finland, I think in the food industry, the curve is going down. Do you have an explanation that we just like the bulk products?
First thing is that learning is a good start, but in a way implementation and execution is much more important. And the last picture, in a way, I tried to visualize that it's about being faster and better than your competition in managing the loop from innovation, from seeing the need, innovating the product, but in a way also you have to launch it and launch it successfully. So it's the entire loop that is critical. How much you spend on research and development, innovation, I think it's more important that you are focused and that you spend your money on the right things. As I said, I left the food industry 15 years ago. I'm not that much in the picture anymore about spending in innovation in the food industry. If you are not prepared to spend anything in any industry, I don't think you will have a chance.
Thank you very much indeed.